guys, these are the tools and materials that we're going to be using for today's tutorial. With me here, I have got my top collar pattern, my under collar pattern, my collar stand or collar band, and I've got my fabric scissors, I've got some sewing pins, and I've got my measuring tape. I've got my fabric, this is the main fabric, and I've got my interlining. So this is fusible. So all you need to do is press on fusible interlining. I have a black color or a charcoal color based on my main fabric. So feel free to use whatever interlining that matches with your main fabric. So if it's a bright color of main fabric you've got, make sure you use like a white or cream interlining for that. And if it's a dark fabric, you can use like what I have here. So without any further ado, let us get into what we have for you today. Now we have our main fabric, so we are going to cut out the top collar and under collar first. And what I've done here, this is the right side of the fabric. I've just turned it over to the wrong side. Then once that is straightened up, make sure they are all aligned in a straight grain. So this is the lay plan of our pattern at the moment. We are just going to first of all start with cutting out the top collar and the under collar, and mind you, we're cutting one piece each, and we need to place this on fold. So you might be wondering, I've still got space here. Yes, that's because we need to fit in the collar band or collar stand on this part of the fabric. But remember, we are going to cut two, and that is a pair of this collar band. So at the moment I have just one. So what I need to do, I'm just first of all going to cut this out. Then with the fabric, I'm going to get another fabric that is exactly the size of the collar stand, and I'm going to place that on top of this, making it a pair once I cut it out. So it's going to make sense when I am done. So first of all, I'm just going to cut the top collar and the under collar first of all, like so. Using my fabric scissors, I'm just going to gently cut this out. So when it comes to your notches, make sure you don't forget to clip your notches on your fabric. It's very important. So just give it a clip and that's it. So now we have our top collar, just one pattern piece of our top collar, which is placed on fold. We have one of that, and we have one of the under collar. So we're going to keep this aside and get our fabric. And so here's my fabric for my collar stand or collar band. So because I just need a little bit at the edge of this fabric, I'm just going to fold it and make sure you have it on a straight line. So I'm just going to fold it like so, and making sure it's wide enough for, as you can see, that is a little bit too, because I just don't want to waste fabric. And I'm just going to make it like so. This should be okay. So now I have that, and make sure the edges are well placed on a straight grain. Sit, making sure it's wide enough for your pattern piece. So once you are okay with that, all you need to do is to pin this. We're just going to pin this down. Please don't forget your notches. All the notches are very important. So once that is cut out, as you can see, we have a pair of our collar band. So we're just going to keep this aside. We have all the main fabrics cut out using our patterns. So we need to concentrate now on the interlining. that we're going to use for our color. So I have my interlining here, and make sure you have your pattern, or make sure you have your fabric that is wide enough for your pattern piece. So for this tutorial, just because my fabric has a little bit of weight, I tend to only interline just one pattern piece, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So in case you have a very light a very fine fabric or a light fabric, you can interline all pieces to give it a little bit of weight. But for my fabric that I've got here today, it's got weight, so I'm not going to interline all the pattern piece. So the only pattern piece I am going to interline is the top pattern collar and the collar band. So I just want to cut out one piece from each pattern piece. So I'm placing this on fold like we always do. So I'm just going to cut out one from this and one, and that's it. So now I have both pattern pieces cut out from my interlining fabric. So when it comes to cutting out your interlining, you need your interlining a little bit lesser than the size of your main fabric. The reason being is when you want to press on your interlining onto your fabric, you don't want a situation whereby there's excess and you get like marks on your ironing board, or it gets stuck to your iron, or it just creates a bit of mess. So what you need to do is to always trim down your interlining before fusing it onto your main fabric, just to give just to be at the right size when pressing them all together. And I'm going to show you an example. Say I've got my main fabric. So what you need to do is to spread this out, making sure you have the wrong side. And when you want to place your interlining, making sure you place the sticky parts onto your fabric. You see, just because it's cut exactly, as you can see, it's cut exactly the same size as the main fabric. Once you press this on, the excess of your interlining tends to bleed onto your ironing board, or it gets stuck on the iron, or it just creates a mess. So what you need to do is just to trim off a little bit, maybe 0.3 centimeters away from the edges, and it sits well within your main fabric. And that's a good practice, so make sure you do that. Just because of time, I didn't cut out a separate piece for my interlining, but ideally you should cut out a separate pattern piece for your interlining. And once you cut out this pattern piece, it's exactly the same as your main pattern piece that you want to cut out. All you need to do is just to reduce the edges, maybe around 0.3 centimeters, and that will serve as your interlining pattern piece. I hope that makes sense. So I'm off to go fuse my main fabric, which is the top color fabric, and I'm going to fuse the interlining to that once I have reduced the edges of my interlining. And also I am going to fuse the collar band as well. So just one piece of the collar band. I'll go ahead to my ironing board to fuse this together. And before you fuse it together, like I said, just reduce the edges of your interlining pattern piece and you're good to go. You're fusing the wrong side to the sticky side of your interlining, like so. Then you press it with your iron and that will be fused. So now we have our fabrics fused up. We have the top collar, which we have fused with the interlining. We have the under collar, which we didn't fuse because, like I said before, because of the nature of the fabric, I really don't need to fuse this pattern piece. And again, we have one pattern piece of the collar stand or collar band. We have that fused as well, and we have the other pattern piece of the collar stand without interlining. So again, just because of the nature of the fabric. So if you have a lighter fabric, you can go ahead to fuse all the pattern pieces. So now that we have our fabrics prepared, we are going to start to sew this up. So first of all, we are going to sew or join the top and the under collar together by sewing it up. So I have my top collar facing the wrong side. The wrong side is up and the right side is down. So what I need to do is to flip this back up, which means the right side is facing up now. And all I need to do is to place the under collar on top of my top collar like so. For this stage, we need to make sure when pinning these two pattern pieces together, in order for the both pattern pieces to be of equal length and size, we are going to stretch the under collar to fit the top collar. So I'm going to just give you a little bit of demonstration here. So here we're going to make sure both pattern pieces are aligned together, and we're going to get our pin to pin this together. We'll make sure it's following the edges rightly. When you notice that, oh, my under collar is too small or is slightly smaller than the top collar, all you need to do is to stretch it, meeting like so, meeting the top collar like so. That's all you need to do, to stretch it out, and that will fit, because the fabric has a little bit of stretch. Even if it's a cotton fabric, there's a little bit of stretch in that fabric to fit in the top collar. So once you stretch it out, making sure it's well aligned together, then we are going to sew that up. So I'm just going to use my sewing pins to stretch this out. That's the under collar meeting the top collar, and I'm going to pin it down. So before we cut out our fabric, make sure you notch your center line position. So get your pattern piece. For you to get your center line mark or center line notch, you just align your pattern piece onto your fabric and just clip that, and this will serve as your center line. Make sure you do that for all your pattern pieces. Now we have, as you can see, we've pinned up our top collar onto our under collar, and we are going to stretch this out, making sure both pattern pieces are well aligned, and we're just going to stitch using our sewing machine the edges. And I'm going to go over to my sewing machine and I'm going to show you how we need to stitch this up. So now I have my collar. I am going to make sure the under collar is facing up. Here is the top collar, which is facing down, so the under collar is facing up. So I am just going to join them now, and once you start joining them, making sure the edges are well aligned. So normally I will use the matching thread with the fabric, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to use a brighter color of thread for demonstration purposes. So we're going to start making sure your seam allowance is exactly 1 centimeter. So you're going to get your under collar pattern piece aligned to the top collar pattern piece at the edge, making sure you're stretching the under collar piece meeting the top collar piece. So start your back stitch. So when sewing along the line, you make sure you adjust the pattern pieces together. So once you get to the edge of your collar, that's the corner of your collar, you need to make sure your machine needle is penetrated straight into your fabric. And once that is done, you're just going to take your foot off the pedal, gradually turn, that is raising the lever up, gradually turn your pattern piece or your collar to the direction you want it to be. And mind you, your machine needle is still penetrated into your fabric on the right direction. I'm just going to go ahead, making sure it's 1 centimeter seam allowance, and I'm just going to sew it straight through like so. So you want to really be gentle at this point. You don't want to rush your way through this point. Making sure you're taking off sewing pins along the way. You don't want to damage your sewing machine needle. And again, adjusting the edges as you sew along. So now we've got into the edge of the collar. We're just going to make sure the needle is pierced and penetrating into your fabric, and turning this over again. Going to take off the sewing pins and align the under collar to the top collar like so before you start sewing to the right direction. So now we have both collars attached together using our sewing machine. As you can see, the edges are neat, and we are going to bag out this collar. Before we bag out our collar, we need to make sure we trim the edges. Approximately 0.5 centimeters lower than what it is now. We're just going to trim out the edges to make sure we have a perfectly folded or bagged out collar. And you're going to see in a bit why we had the top collar slightly bigger than the under collar. So once we are done trimming the edge of our collar, we are going to go ahead to bag this out. So when I say bag out, this is what I mean. So we're just going to gently bag this out like so. And once that is done, we are going to make sure the edges, you can use a sharp object, but make sure it's not too sharp that it penetrates through your collar. You want to gently make sure the edges are well bagged out like so. So once you are done with that, you move over to the other side, and once that is done, we are just going to press this, making it nice and flat. So there you have it. So this is the top collar, and we're just going to press that flat and neat. So like I said earlier on, I wanted to explain why we normally have the top collar slightly bigger than the under collar, and this is the reason why we have that. When you have the top collar and the under collar at the same size, you tend, when you fold this or when you press this, this is what you get when it's all pressed out. And professionally, or if you want your job to be very neat, you really don't need it to look like this. What you need is the top collar rolling over, slightly over, and when you press this, you don't see this seam. You only see the very crisp edge of the top collar. So I'm going to press this, and you're going to see what I mean in a minute. I know a lot of people tend to make sure the top and the under collar are the same size, but good practice is for you to always have your top collar slightly bigger than the under collar, and you stretch it out when you sew it. So when you press it open, making sure your top collar is rolling underneath. So it's like you're tucking in the top collar and making sure the edges is crisp and neat, as opposed to having it look like this. So I'm going to show you the difference once this is pressed out. Now we have pressed this flat. As you can see, the edges are well pressed. Now, the reason why we have our top collar slightly bigger or larger than the under collar Once it's pressed, you can see the edge is smooth. We don't have any seam. As you can see, this is why we have the top collar larger than the under collar, so that the top collar can roll over to the under collar like so. So once you press this, you can see it's a smooth and well crisp edge, because you don't want to see the seam. Sometimes when you have both pattern pieces cut out the same size, you tend to see like a crease here, which is the seam, but we don't need to see that. As you can see, this is way neater than you seeing a seam in between. And as you can see, once we flip this over, we can see that we have the top collar here, which is this piece, and we have the under collar. Because we had the top collar slightly larger than the under collar, you can see the top collar rolled over to the under collar, hiding the seam that you would have seen here. It's hiding it underneath the collar, because once this is attached to your garment, you don't see this part. All you see is a neat and crisp edge. And this is why we have the top collar slightly bigger than the under collar, so you don't see this seam on the edge here. And this, it makes it look professional, it makes it neater. Now that we have this, so we're going to get our collar stand. So what we need to do now is to make sure the right sides are facing up, and we're going to fold along 1 centimeter. We're just going to fold, we're going to press 1 centimeter from the interfaced collar band. That's what we're going to do first of all before we commence to the next stage. So I'm going to take this to the ironing board and fold up 1 centimeter at the edge of our collar band. So now we have pressed 1 centimeter from the edge of our collar band. What we need to do is to make sure we trim the edges of our collar stand like so. Then once that is done, we are going to align both pattern pieces together like so. So now we are ready to attach our top collar to our collar stand. This is the top collar, and the top collar is facing up, which is the right side facing up. We are going to get our collar stand, the fuse bit of our collar stand, and we're going to turn this over, making sure this edge matches this edge of the collar, of the top collar. And remember, we have our notches. Don't forget your notches. You want to make sure edge to edge the notches are well placed at the edge of your top collar like so. So let's just pin that in place so we don't get it mixed up. We're going to place this like so. Then we're going to turn this over as well and get the other part of our collar stand, which is not fused. We're going to place the wrong side, which is facing up, the right side facing down. Place this bead on top of our collar stand, so the top collar is in between the collar stand like so. So we need to make sure edge to edge matches each other. So we have our notch here, making sure the notch is at the same position as the edge of our top collar like so. So we have one underneath and we have this one on top. So we need to get our pin, and we just pin this down in order for it not to move. We're just going to secure this by pinning it down, and we are going to as well pin along the edge of our collar like so. Make sure center notches are well aligned together, then you pin all the way through. So once we've pinned all the edges like so, we're just going to flip it and making you understand what we have here. So because we folded 1 centimeter from the edge of our collar stand, make sure you're leaving 1 centimeter as well, like so, 1 centimeter. So this is folded and we're leaving 1 centimeter for that part. I'm going to explain it again so it makes sense. You have your top collar facing right. You have the top part of your collar stand facing each other. So you place that on top. You're going to flip this over. Now the other side of your collar stand that is not fused, you're going to face that to the under collar like so. So it's going to be right side to right side facing each other, and it's going to give you that sandwich effect, meaning the top collar is in between both collar stand patterns. So you're just going to sew around the edge like so. So now I am done stitching the edges of all our collars together like so. So remember, we're going to, when stitching your patterns all together, make sure you start from the folded part, which is like this, back stitch, then you sew along, joining all the colors together. And once you get to the end of the folded bit, which is this, you don't sew beyond this part. Make sure you back stitch to lock that in, and it's going to look like this. So next we are going to, like we did before, trim the edge of our collar, and we are going to bag out as well like we did before. So once that is done, you can see now that this is how it's going to look. So I'm just going to trim the edge. So as you can see, that's trimmed out, and now we're going to press this open by bagging this out and pressing it, and that will be all for our collar. So I'm just going to show you once this is pressed. So this is how it should look once it's pressed.